Good afternoon and good morning to our distinguished speakers and guests in Asia and Europe, and welcome to our webinar today, Climate Change and EU Space Data, Exploring Opportunities for ASEAN Countries. My name is Andreas Becker. I'm the team leader of the EU Global Action on Space, under which this webinar is being organized, and I will be your moderator today. We will explore today the added value that the EU space program can bring to users seeking to mitigate the effects of climate change in ASEAN countries and showcase the support that the European Union can provide through its space program. We will also have the opportunity to hear from multiple local stakeholders who will highlight their ongoing initiatives to fight climate change using Earth observation, in short EO data, and their specific needs. Before we start the webinar, I would like to let you know that you can ask your questions at any time by typing in the chat box at the bottom right of your screen. And we encourage you also to interact with other participants and speakers in the same chat. You can select in the chat if you want to have a private chat with someone or send a message to the whole group. Please be informed that the webinar will be recorded, and presentations will be made available for everyone following the webinar on the website of the EU Global Action on Space. A little housekeeping reminder to our dear panelists and speakers. Please stick to the time that you have been given. And 1 minute before your presentation is over, I will let you know that it's 1 minute to go, to make sure that everybody here on the panel has enough time to present their presentations, and also, of course, that we have enough time to answer questions and also for our roundtable session. Without further ado, then let me give the floor to our first keynote speaker, Yolanda Van Einhofen, head of Unit B3, which is the Unit for International Relations and Communication at the European Commission's Directorate General for Defense Industry and Space, DG DEFIS. Yolanda will open this webinar by providing an overview of the current and prospective relations between the EU and ASEAN countries, in particular when it comes to cooperation in the space domain. Yolanda, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas, and I hope everyone can hear me. First, good afternoon, of course, for everyone who's joining from Asia, and good morning to everyone who's joining from Europe, and welcome. I have the pleasure to open this webinar entitled Climate Change and EU Space Data, Exploring Opportunities for ASEAN Countries, which is indeed organized by the EU Global Action on Space with the support of the European Commission. Now, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome the Czech authorities who will hold the EU presidency of the EU Council as from the 1st of July. And I would in particular like to welcome Mr. Marek Libericki. He is the ambassador of the Czech Republic in Bangkok, and Mr. Miroslav Havranek, the director of the Czech Environment Agency, who will also address the audience today. Now, the EU space program is built on several flagship components which deliver space-based services on a daily basis, including Copernicus for Earth observation and Galileo for satellite navigation. Now, space is an important tool for supporting sustainable development in Europe and beyond. Copernicus is the most comprehensive Earth observation program in the world today. It gathers data and information on the state of our planet and its many ecosystems. This data is available free of charge to anyone around the world. This supports many countries, including the ASEAN countries, in tackling climate change and dealing with pressing societal issues from environmental protection, crop monitoring to disaster support. Now, Galileo is the most accurate and precise satellite navigation system available today, with an accuracy going below 1 meter. And Galileo's open service already provides outstanding positioning and timing services, enabling sustainable and smart applications for society. A new free Galileo high accuracy service will bring accuracy down to 20 centimeter levels, and it will be available in areas with difficult network coverage, such as remote and urban areas. Now, the ASEAN countries have access to the data and services of the EU space program components Galileo and Copernicus. They are available to the users around the globe free of charge. Copernicus and Galileo also provide significant business opportunities for companies to develop innovative solutions and applications tailored to the particular national context. In this webinar, the importance of these space capabilities and space-related innovation to tackle pressing current societal challenges, such as fighting climate change, preserving the environment and its biodiversity, will be shown. Now, with a focus on Earth observation, a particular, as I already pointed out, important component of the European Union space program, it shows that we have currently a series of Earth observation satellites for which support operational services delivering regularly high quality products for land, ocean, atmosphere, monitoring and supporting emergency management. Copernicus addresses a key global challenge, climate change, and supports its mitigation and adaptation by providing policymakers with data to make informed decisions. Monitoring from space supports the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Now, the European Union Space Observation Programme Copernicus is setting global standards by offering the most accurate climate and environmental data. Now, the Copernicus Climate Change Service provides authoritative information about the past, the present and future climate, as well as tools to enable climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies by policymakers and businesses. But I would also like to stress that the global coverage of Copernicus services can bring important added value to Asia and in particular the ASEAN countries in fields such as inland water quality monitoring through its land service, climate protection through its climate service, which informs on climate trends, preparing for adaptation measures and future agricultural trends, the provision of precise information on ocean and coastal water conditions for better fishing and safe navigation, delivered through its marine service, and the important service offered by the Copernicus Emergency Service, rapid mapping, as well as risk and recovery in case of natural disasters like floods, landslides and volcano eruptions, and the detailed monitoring on protected and high biodiversity areas provided by its land service. Now, these services, which are free and openly accessible all over the world, are available to ASEAN members, their institutions and companies, and their citizens at large. The EU can also support ASEAN stakeholders in charge of climate and biodiversity monitoring and its space-related ecosystem at large by extending the Copernicus Relays and Copernicus Academy networks to its member states. These two important networks, still not present in ASEAN nor in Asia actually, provide excellent first-hand technical information on Copernicus and a unique opportunity to its members to network and exchange with top-of-the-mark EU experts in Earth observation. Now, in 2018, we had a first successful workshop on space applications Copernicus for ASEAN countries. With Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam and Thailand, we are in discussion for Copernicus arrangement on data exchange. These partnerships will provide the basis for enhanced use of Copernicus data in the region. Now, also the EU Global Action on Space is an interesting EU initiative which provides free information on the Union space program and free training possibilities and coaching services to help boost cooperation with partners in the EU in the field of space. These instruments can support the ASEAN space ecosystem and other sectors that may well benefit from EU space capabilities such as air, roads, rail and maritime transport, agriculture, mining, geoservicing or fishing. There are, however, also challenges ahead. One of them is how to disseminate Earth observation products to make them available for all without any restriction and providing an efficient, timely response. For that purpose, we could envisage entering into some kind of cooperation through an administrative cooperation arrangement with ASEAN to improve access to Copernicus data and products and enable new local Copernicus-based services and products in ASEAN member states. Allow me also to highlight the importance of women in space. I must underline that Earth observation and the space sector offer a real opportunity for women, reflected in the Women in Copernicus initiative. We believe any future cooperation could also include this important aspect, to provide concrete opportunities in the use and development of space-based technologies, products and services for women in ASEAN. The Earth observation sector is evolving fast, creating opportunities in the European Union and ASEAN and Asia. The EU Agency for the Space Programme in Prague recently published a 2022 Earth Observation and GNSS Market Report. The report estimates that Earth observation-related revenues will potentially double in the next decade, where the Earth observation applications market boosts a large pool of value-added services. I invite you to read this report as it highlights striking opportunities for businesses in your countries based on EU space capabilities. Now, to conclude, we are indeed all facing new environmental and climate issues, but also other pressing issues such as health. Fortunately, these can be addressed through state-of-the-art services, data and products offered by Copernicus and Earth observation. We can and must reinforce the EU-ASEAN collaboration on space to face these new challenges. The European Commission is ready to strengthen space cooperation with ASEAN and its members to ensure access to all the benefits of the Union Space Programme. I wish you a very fruitful webinar today, and I thank you for your attention. Bye.
Thank you, Yolanda, for providing this important overview to start the webinar. Building on Yolanda's keynote, please allow me to give the floor now to our second keynote speaker, Tatya Chantragan, who is Deputy Executive Director of the Geoinformatics and Space Technology Department Agency, and who is also Chairman of the ASEAN Subcommittee on Space Technology and Applications. Tatya will give us some opening considerations on ASEAN countries' space-related activities and their cooperation with the EU. Tatya, the floor is yours for the next 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, good morning. His Excellency Mr. Marek Lipsitsky, the Ambassador of Czech Republic in Bangkok, Ms. Yolanda Van Einhofen, and all distinguished delegates. On behalf of ASEAN Subcommittee on Space Technology and Applications, or SCOSA, currently chaired by Thailand under Operation of Geoinformatics and Space Technology Development Agency, or GISTA. It is my distinct pleasure to deliver welcome remark on this significant workshop. Presently, extreme climate threatens human well-being with food and water scarcity, increased disaster events, extreme heat, more disease, and economic losses. On the one hand, natural resources are adversely affected by degrading surfaces of ecosystem, which results to vast impact on the sustainable cycle of in natural, human, economic, social capital dimensions. In order to solve these issues, the state-of-the-art technology, Earth observation science, is the crucial dominant for supporting strategic decision-making, climate change monitoring and prediction, and environment understanding. I'm glad that this workshop will allow ASEAN participants to learn space-based solutions, as well as to explore the data that's essential for taking climate challenges issues in ASEAN. Furthermore, Roundtable is a good opportunity to share experience and cooperate networks between two regions for generating fruitful contributions. GISTA has driven ASEAN Research Center for Space Technology and Applications, or ARTSA, as being a platform for bridging scientific community with international networks and stakeholders by delivering capacity building activities and supporting joint research. As being a chair of the Executive Committee of ARTSA, we are willing to support the regarded activities by linking to international networks, providing data and technology, as well as continuing to have more collaboration and projects in order to generate tangible societal benefits and provide appropriate development for the regions. At the end of the day, I sincerely hope that the workshop will push forward jointly cooperation between EU and ASEAN based on intelligence and data and technological applications as space technology and geoinformatics for mitigating, adapting under current climate challenge conditions and extend international network across the region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Tatya, for providing these insights into the space activities of ASEAN countries. We will now start our first session on the European Union Space Program, and with some words from Luis Cuervo Spotorno, who is also at DG DEFIS, the European Commission's Directorate General for Defense, Industry and Space, who's Policy Officer at the unit B3 International Relations and Communication. Luis will now share an overview of the EU space program and its components with us. Luis, the floor is yours for the next 15 minutes.
Thank you, Andreas. Very warm welcome to the ambassador, the authorities listening to us today. Next, please. I'm going to give you a very short overview on where we stand as far as the EU space program is concerned. As it happens, the EU space program, I mean, in terms of budget, it is not the the biggest space program in the world, but it does have a significant and it is having a significant impact through its major components, namely Galileo and EGNOS and Copernicus, which I will define in the next slide, please. EGNOS, Galileo and EGNOS are two major components of this EU space of our EU space program. Galileo is the Europe's global navigation satellite system, the so-called GNSS, and it offers high precision timing, positioning, and emergency services to both institutions and citizens worldwide. It features a very important search and rescue service to assist people in distress. And what is more important, I would stress, is that it is the only GNSS in the world capable of offering 20 centimeter high accuracy positioning. EGNOS, on the other hand side, is a Europe's satellite-based augmentation service currently operating in the European region, but we also have EGNOS availability in other regions of the world which use geostationary satellites. As it happens, EGNOS enhances the positioning data of GPS, and in very shortly it will actually improve the performance of Galileo as well. What is important to highlight here is that these systems have already created a huge upstream and downstream value market where you can actually see the figures on the screen. Next slide, please. Copernicus is the other very important key satellite system run by the European Union, and as Galileo and EGNOS actually offer signals, what Copernicus does is it offers images and data. It offers images and data, as Yolanda was explaining before, for a number of services, namely through 6 thematic services, very well-defined thematic services, which are, as a matter of fact, given to both to institutions and the private sector in a free manner. And these services are give very specific and precise data for land, marine, atmosphere, climate change, emergency, and security functions. Copernicus is a very complex system which is being developed and run through what we call entrusted entities, namely the European Space Agency, and many other very important agencies in Europe. It does provide all the data on a full, free, and open policy, so everybody throughout the world can actually have access to Copernicus data and maps, namely through what we call the DS platforms. As we mentioned, for as a case for Galileo and EGNOS, Copernicus is actually providing a very significant Earth observation downstream market, and which is based basically on a huge amount of data which is available daily. Next slide, please. Um, I think I mean, we could actually be speaking on Copernicus for 3 hours, but I think we don't have the time to do that today. I think it's actually important to underline that there are a number of mapping services which are available through Copernicus. In particular, I would highlight the climate change service, which gives estimates of climate variables, reanalysis of both globally and regionally, climate projections, and support to mitigation and adaptation strategies. Next slide, please. I think it is also very relevant and important for the Asian community countries to be aware that the Copernicus Emergency Service is an on-demand risk mapping service, which is actually linked to these disasters. This service is very widely used not only in Europe but throughout the world. It works very well, and we are most happy to be able to offer this to our Asian partners. This is a service which is run centrally in Brussels on a 24/7 basis and is activated through the European Union delegations in the countries concerned. Next, please. Yolanda mentioned before two very important networks which are enabling us to outreach all the capabilities and services of Copernicus throughout Europe and the world. And we, as she said before, we are very much welcoming new applications from Asian countries. We currently have two of these networks. The first one of which is the so-called Copernicus Academy. Um, this is a network composed of more than 185 members throughout the world, composed mainly by top academic institutions, which enables global Earth observation research worldwide. The main aim of this network is to promote space in education and accelerate the research to market link. Next, please. The Copernicus Relays is the other important network to complement Copernicus Academy. This network it has a similar function, but is more concentrated, I would say, on relaying information on Copernicus locally. So basically, I would say we could term the Copernicus Relays members as the eyes of Copernicus in each of the European countries and throughout the world. So what basically they do, they enable local and global cooperation on Earth observation. They support the local users, communities, and most importantly, they organize promotional events and training on this subject. Next, please. It is really important to mention that these two very key components of the EU space program interact. I mean, they were actually created not to interact amongst each other, but as it happens, the market trends are making it more and more visible that there are huge added values to gain out of the interaction of these two of out of the interaction of Galileo with Copernicus. And as you can see on the screen, there are a huge number of applications where actually the end users are going to be using both Galileo's and EGNOS signals and the images and data provided through Copernicus. Next, please. And then we come to my final part of this short presentation, which is is about the actual global action on space, which is run through our consortium under with the support of the and the finance of the European Commission. Basically, what we want to do, what we want to achieve through the global action on space is I would say three major objectives. The first one of which is to promote the EU space program capabilities worldwide, so to boost market uptake of its components throughout the world. And it is important to mention that this global action, of course, is not tackling only the Asian country community, but also, all other continents throughout the world. So the Americas, Africa, European neighborhood, and so forth. The second major objective would be is actually to provide targeted space market information to facilitate the internationalization of the EU space sector. So this is aiming fundamentally to support the EU space community to enter into new cooperation with stakeholders all around the world. And this links very nicely to the third objective of this action, which is to enable concrete business opportunities for the EU space sector in new markets and obviously in the Asian countries. Next, please. This is done. This is done with having in mind very specifically the how would I say the opportunities not to be missed by SMEs. I mean, we know very well that large companies have already their networks and their very specific instruments to go international, but this is frequently not the case for SMEs. So what we are doing here is concentrating our efforts to provide to SMEs, both from Europe and from other target countries, amongst which we obviously include the Asian countries. We are providing these SMEs with very concrete, tailored business technical support, including namely access to a pool of international experts I would even call them coaches, which are going to actually help them find the best match possible with a European counterpart. It is really important that these matches are. This is all about space. It's all about using EU space capabilities, but it does not necessarily mean that we are only tackling companies and institutions which are actually currently dealing with space or which are actually proficient on space. When I say this because next slides, please. Because there are actually a number of sectors which are not, which are not specifically related to the space domain, such as, for instance, agriculture, road transport, trains, etc., etc., but which nevertheless may gain a significant advantage in their businesses and in their international outreach in using space capabilities. Um, the business coaching services offered through the Global Action are very, very concrete. You can see, I will not dwell into the details now because we don't have a lot of time, but you can see on the screen, and you will be able to see this PowerPoint on the Global Action platform. Um, you can see that it actually comprises a very specific set of services and of steps, I would say, um, uh, going from education webinars, a concrete matchmaking possibility through events and online events, very specific, tailor-made individual coaching facility, which will eventually lead to the conclusion of concrete agreements with EU space stakeholders. Next, please. And this is my very last slide. It is more than obvious that this is what most stakeholders want to know: who can actually benefit from these services. I am very glad to say that at the European Commission we have envisaged these services in such a way that they will be able to encompass the largest possible number of not only companies but stakeholders in general. So we are talking about, possible beneficiaries can be both public and private institutions, space agencies, research institutions, universities, technology centers, and of course, companies. The only very important restriction on this eligibility criteria is that these stakeholders must not be subject to restrictive measures imposed by the EU and must demonstrate financial figures for the last 3 years. You will be able to to assess in detail all the activities and conditions adhered to these services on the EU Global Space webpage, which you will find on the lower left-hand side of the screen. Next, please. And this is my very last one. I would very much like to thank our participants for being here today, the team, the Global Action team, for organizing this, and I wish you a very fruitful and successful webinar. Thank you very much. Back to you, Andreas.
Thank you, Luis, for introducing us to the EU space program and also to present these services through which entities in ASEAN countries can benefit from the EU space program. We're now moving to the second presentation, which will deal with Copernicus climate change. So building on the general presentation of the EU space program, going into a bit more detail on Copernicus and what it can do. Carlo Buontempo, who is director of the Copernicus Climate Change Service of the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasts, will give this presentation and present advantages for ASEAN countries. Carlo, the floor is yours for the next 15 minutes.
Thank you, Andreas, and thank you for this invitation. It's a really great pleasure to be here with you today and talk to you speak about the Climate Change Service. Next slide, please. So I'm indeed the director of the Climate Change Service. That is one of those services that has been entrusted to one institution. In this case, is the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast, which is probably one of the organizations with the most difficult acronym, but it's often abbreviated in ECMWF using the English spelling for it. Next slide, please. So as we heard from Luis Cuervo, the Copernicus program can be divided into two parts. The space component that deals with the launch, the design, the launch, and the retrieval of the data from satellite, and the service component that is structured over 6 services. So we have the atmosphere, the marine, the land, the emergency, the security, and the climate change service. So the climate change service is a bit the junior service. It only became operational in 2018, but since then has gathered momentum. Next slide, please. So in a sense, if you want to summarize what is the key mission of the service, well, this infographic may help you somehow. So you see on the left, there is a wealth of data coming from satellite, and typically this is in the petabyte, is a huge volume of data. It's coming from sensor on satellite, but also on planes, on ships, on ground-based station, and also more and more from models. All of this is integrated into something that we call the climate data store, and this is an interface to society, this being the legislator at the EU level, at national level, but also businesses and citizens in general. So I won't have time here to go through the many use cases and applications that have been developed downstream of us, because just there is not time. But I would like to go quite rapidly through the program just to show you what is on offer and how it's being used. Just as an idea of the scale, at the moment, the climate change service alone attracts some 135,000 users all over the world, to whom it delivers some 80 terabytes of data per day. So it's really a large volume of data. Next slide, please. So you can imagine these are the famous stripes, the climate stripes that Ed Hawkins made famous, looking at the past and the warming. You see there the warming of the atmosphere, and the future that lays ahead. And it's really very much our choice what we want to do with our future. But in order to decide what to do and how much the climate does change, how much it's changing now, and what the future holds, we need to have good quality data. And as I was mentioning in the introduction, the Climate Change Service provide the data covering all aspects of climate. So observational data for the past climate, reanalysis of which I will tell you more in a minute, covering the most recent past, then the seasonal prediction for the next 6 months, and the climate projections for the end of the century kind of scenario. Next slide, please. And since we were established in 2018, I think we found a place for ourselves. Not only the large volume of data and the large number of requests that we respond to, 500,000 per day, but also a significant space in the science arena. The most popular data set of ours, the ERA5 global reanalysis, since the paper referring to it was published back in 2020, so just a couple of years, attracted over 2,000, nearly 2,500 citations. CTS was also very prominent in the last IPCC report, where it was presented as an exemplar of a climate service, global climate service, but also where this data set of ours were referred numerous times throughout the report. By the way, if you see a QR code on the top right of the slide and you have a mobile phone with you, you can scan the QR, and this will lead you to a web page where you can find more information about the specific content of the slide itself. Next slide, please. So the first set of data we provide access to are observation, and we use the concept of essential climate variable developed by the GCOS, the Global Climate Observing System. So here in this infographic, you see the 54 ECVs, the 54 variables that are considered to be essential to describe the climate system. And encircled in red or in yellow, you see those we provide access to. Others are being developed, but for some of them, the science is not yet mature to have a climate data record. And the idea here is to develop a data record that goes as far back in the past as possible and is maintained regularly with time. Next slide, please. So what does it mean in reality? Let's pick an example. For instance, this is soil moisture. And in this case, this is an interface that you can play with if you want. I just picked a couple of cities, I think it's Hanoi and Bangkok. And in the top plot on the right, you see the annual cycle of soil moisture as retrieved from satellite. And in the bottom plot, you see the trend in soil moisture for the two locations. Well, it's interesting, it's interactive, but I guess the question is, why should I trust it, or whether should you trust it? Please click once. So the idea is really builds on, if you can move forward a bit. Oh, too much. Oh, good. It's good. Yes, it was good. Basically, the idea is that this builds on top of the principle of Copernicus of full, free, and open. And the idea is that not only you can have an interactive plot, or you can generate one if you like, but you can see where the data is coming from. So this is the data, the soil moisture I was showing in the previous slide actually come from the ESA CCI initiative and is brokered to the Climate Data Store and is updated regularly thanks to the climate data, thanks to the Copernicus Climate Change Service. So this is information you can find. But still, if you have doubt about how to use it or whether it's solid enough for the application you're interested in, you can actually look at the variable level, what is the quality attribute of this data set. Next, please. Yeah, so this is the kind of information you get at the granularity of the variable dataset per dataset. You can see the maturity of the dataset, how to use it, how it has been used in the past, what is the uncertainty, and so on and so forth. And this, I mean, clearly, I don't have time to go through the 22 variables that we have in the catalog, but this gives you an idea of what we have there. Next slide, please. And just to show that it's not just soil moisture, and that was just a random pick, there's a similar example for an interface, in this case, looking at glaciers, and I picked the glaciers in Central Asia being sort of the water tower of most of the continent. And you see in the right, the retreat and the reduction in the mass balance of the glacier. Next slide, please. So this was the observation from satellite. But as you see here, these are all entries of observation, in this case, not from satellite, but from ground-based station or radiosondes or other sort of station that are complementary and still so very important when looking at climate. And one of the elements we worked on is really to rescue all data, because our understanding of the climate depends crucially on the length of the record. So if we can rescue data that is maybe lost in some archive, this helps us and helps our user understand how climate is affecting them. Next slide, please. But this was very much about observation. Our most popular product actually is not directly a product of observation. You can see it as a combination of the best satellite information we have and also ground-based station and the best modeling capability we have. So we use the weather prediction model that we use day in, day out to make weather prediction over the historical period using all the information and all the data coming from satellite and from sensor to reconstruct the weather of the past anywhere on the planet at our hourly resolution back to the 1950s. So through this approach that we call reanalysis, we can really describe the climate anywhere on the globe. And what you see on the bottom, this colorful bar, is a altitude time plot where you see the plot is getting yellower and reddish at the bottom, indicating the warming of the troposphere, the lower part of the atmosphere. While at the same time you see the more blue in the top of the plot, which is the cooling of the stratosphere that you expect from climate change. Next slide, please. So this is by far our most popular product, and in a sense is also a metaphor of how information from satellite can be best combined with our physical understanding of the world. So this is an example of the famous NASA the Apollo 17 picture of the Earth, taken a few weeks before I was born. And on the left-hand side, you see the image actually taken by the astronaut. And what you see on the right-hand side is a reconstruction of the same image made by the weather prediction model. And at that time, we had much fewer observations than we have now. So you can imagine that this mechanism of assimilating information from satellite is a good way of understanding and describing the world around us. Next slide, please. And we use it day in, day out to monitor the climate. So we have an annual publication called the European State of the Climate Report that focuses on Europe, unsurprisingly. But the same approach can be used anywhere on the globe. So where you find data about greenhouse gases concentration, temperature, sea level, SST or sea surface temperature, glaciers, ice sheets, sea ice, and many other variables. So this can be used and are being used also in the State of the Climate Report of the WMO. And we just do a specific zoom, if you want, a specific snapshot for Europe that has been proven very popular with the general public and with the press. Next slide, please. It's not just about the present, it's also about the future. These are the seasonal prediction. Seasonal prediction are very important, especially in Southeastern Asia and in all the Pacific region because of the importance that El Nino has in that area. We combine the information coming from the producing center in Europe. So this is the Deutsche Wetterdienst, ECMWF itself, Meteo France, Met Office in the UK, and CMCC in Italy, with also the information coming from Canada, from the US, and from Japan, and hopefully after the summer also from Australia. We combine all of this, both in terms of graphical output, next one please, and numerical output for the present and the past to obtain maps of probability of occurrence of specific event over the next few months. Next slide, please. So in this example here, one more, please. Yeah, in this case, you see the Nino plume and the evolution of the Nino plume according to the different model. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, to complete our portfolio, we have the global projection both from the CMIP, so these are the projections that underpin, for instance, the IPCC report, but also from the Codex initiative. So these are higher resolution projection that provide more detail in specific areas, and both of them are available to the Climate Data Store. Next slide, please. So these are indeed the higher resolution projection that this is the Codex initiative. And initially we started with the European domain, focusing on Europe, but then given that there was a strong pressure from our user all over the globe, we extended this effort to cover all the Codex domain, including Asia, Australia, Africa, South America, and so on. Next slide, please. So what's coming next? I don't have time to explain the entire evolution of the service. I just want to focus on a couple of elements, the most important of which is the evolution of our reanalysis that we mentioned before. This takes years to produce, by far our most popular product, and we are working now on the next generation of reanalysis, ERA 6. This will enter into production in 2024 and is expected to be available to user in 2027. Over the next year and a half, we will firm up what the configuration of this reanalysis will be like. And one of the key elements there, being a truly user-driven program, is to hear from our user what they would like to see in this reanalysis, what is important to them. So that's what we are working on at the moment. Next slide, please. So this is an example of some of the elements that we think will be there. The resolution of the reanalysis will be higher than it is now, going to 18 kilometers or better. There will be a coupling with the atmosphere, but also, there will be a coupling between the atmosphere and the ocean, and possibly some element of coupling with the land. There will be more use of satellite information, and more importantly, there will be a better model, because since the ERA 5 was produced a few years back, things have evolved, and we are better at using this observation in the model. So this is certainly something we are working on. But as I mentioned before, if there is something specific to Southeast Asia that is important to you and you would like to be better represented in the model, please let us know so that we can try to address it in this next reanalysis. Next slide, please. Because we are truly
Carlo, 1 minute to go.
Yeah, I'm wrapping up. This is just to say that we are truly user-driven, and our user support is very active. We now have also this virtual assistant in the form of a duck, which is a bit of our mascot symbol, that you can interrogate and ask questions to, and has been incredibly popular with our user. And we really look forward to hearing from you, hearing your needs and your requirements, so that we can respond to those. Next slide, which is the last slide. Here there are some way of getting in touch with us on media, on social media and email. So please be in touch. We'll look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlo, for providing us with this important overview of the Copernicus Climate Change Service. Very relevant. Now we'll look at the national level within the European Union, how Copernicus data is used to monitor climate change. And for that, I give the floor to Miroslav Havranek, who is the director of the Czech Environmental Information Agency. Miroslav, the floor is yours for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Very well. And we see your presentation.
And you see my presentation. Perfect. My name is Miroslav Havranek. I'm director of Czech Environmental Information Agency. We are part of the Ministry of Environment, and I'm also chairman of National Copernicus Secretariat, which is body that encompasses and gathers all relevant state and non-state actors using Copernicus constellation for various purposes. I will be talking briefly about two important use cases that are demonstrating usage of Copernicus data to monitoring national environment, and on one hand, and on second hand, also showing how climate change progresses and how Copernicus can be used to monitor mostly impacts of the climate change in our country. This is just an overview picture showing various services that Copernicus constellation can provide, and quite surprisingly, maybe I will not be focusing on CAMS, atmospheric monitoring service, but on land monitoring service. The reason is that most of the impacts from climate change we see now are on land use change, land cover change, and various components. One important thing that happened quite recently, actually last year, was that due to very improbable condition that happened in our country, we had quite destructive tornado in the southern part of our country. On 21st of June, in southern Moravia, which is region of the Czech Republic, there happened to be one of the largest tornado we ever had in recorded history. Just to give a notion to our colleagues from Asian countries, this is very, very rare phenomenon in Europe in general, and very, very rare phenomenon in Czech Republic in particular. Category of this tornado was categorized as F4, which is one category below the most destructive. 6 people died directly and hundreds of people were injured. And how did we use Copernicus service to assess and monitor and generally assess the impact of this tornado? There was an expert group established at our Hydrometeorological Institute that is also part of the Copernicus users group, and they've created a summary report on this tornado using mostly Sentinel-2 data. And one of the important question this expert group need to answer was where tornado actually hit and extent of the damage of the tornado. And using the Sentinel-2 data, our experts were able to establish clear trajectory of the tornado using Sentinel-2 imagery. And as you can, by naked eye, actually see where tornado went. You see the trajectory went through forest and through several villages. And using false imagery with some highlights, the path of the tornado is quite visible. We also used comparative analysis from data before 24th, before it hit, and change in NDVI vegetation index showed clearly where tornado actually went through the area and went through the landscape. Not only the damage, also the spreading of, for example, shredded houses and so on. So this use of Copernicus data was very handy and very useful, and it was generally immediately at our fingertips for no cost. Another quite important impact of climate change we are facing now in our country, and we are able to monitor via Copernicus land services, is our bark beetle calamity. Bark beetle is the kind of beetle that actually impacts spruce monoculture, which is predominant ecosystem in our country. There are several factors that are factoring in this calamity, but one of them is poor forest management, long-term drought, and generally climate change, because our spruce monoculture are not accustomed to the climate that we are now having in our country. And to show you how this calamity progressed, to give you a broad picture, in our country, about 30% of area is forest. About 75% of this area is coniferous forests. And from this coniferous forest, about 80% of them are damaged up to 25%. So we are facing now unprecedented catastrophe in our forest area. And we are using Copernicus land monitoring services to show how the calamity progresses. So you see the picture of one of our mountains, Jeseniki, which is showing the pink color or violet color is showing a deforestation in just 3 years. And to see how the landscape is changing, we are using derivative from the Copernicus data. We are using Corin land cover, which we are also, as a CENIA, we are also compiling for our country. And in this right, let's say, top right corner, this very light green, you see creeping deforestation around cities in our country, which is the yellow spot in the center of the map. The thing is that deforestation is increasing even in our most protected area. On this picture, you see picture of southern Czechia, Šumava, where we have nice comparison how spruce monoculture behaves compared to mixed forest, coniferous and broadleaves on Bavarian side. And as you see, change for 20, generally almost 30 years is very significant, while German side, where the forests are more, let's say, balanced and mixed, coniferous and broadleafs are faring much better than Czech monoculture, where we are facing huge deforested areas in this region. Just to wrap up, I don't know how much time I have, but I had 10 minutes, so 16 slides seemed fine. Just to wrap up, we are using Copernicus data and products for long-term monitoring, development of landscape and land cover and land use, provides us quite unique insight into changes that our country is generally having right now, help us to understand what are the drivers of the change, and also help us to react on climate change, because when we know what is happening, we know why it is happening, we can better adapt, or we can better change our ways how we manage our land to be more resilient. Thank you for your attention, and I hope I filled my slot.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Miroslav, also for sticking to the time very precisely, and of course for providing a concrete use case of how Copernicus data is used to monitor the environment. We'll now move forward to another component of the European Union Space Program, and for that we have Maria Mota Rodrigo of the European Union Agency for the Space Program. Maria will now shed light on how EGNOS and Galileo help to improve the effects of fighting climate change. Maria, the floor is yours for 10 minutes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you very much for the introduction and for having us today with you in this webinar. Now today I'm going to talk about a different technology, different to Copernicus, also space technology, which are the global navigation satellite systems Galileo and EGNOS, and how they can help in understanding and fighting these climate change effects. Next slide, please. And next, please. First of all, let me briefly introduce EUSPA. EUSPA is the European Union Agency for the Space Program, and EUSPA is tasked with the exploitation of these global navigation satellite systems, the European Gnss, Galileo and EGNOS. EUSPA is responsible for the management of these programs, the operation, the evolution activities, the maintenance activities, and so on. In addition to this, EUSPA is also responsible for the security aspects of all the space programs, not only Galileo and EGNOS, but also GovSatcom and Copernicus. And in addition to this, EUSPA is also responsible for the market development of these all space programs, the user and market uptake, the development of downstream applications, innovation initiatives, and promotion activities, and so on. Next slide, please. Now, after this brief introduction, we can move on to talk about the European GNSS. Let's explain or give us some details about these systems. These systems provide, the GNSS provide at global level satellite signals for the users to compute their position, their precise position and time reference. In contrast to Copernicus, that was explained in the presentations before, that provides information, images, and data. The navigation satellite systems provide signals for the user to compute the position, the precise position or time reference. This is an idea that needs to be clarified to understand the application of these systems. Next slide, please. And Galileo is the European GNSS, is the European Global Navigation Satellite System. In this slide, I would like to give some details about the particularities or added value provided by Galileo. Galileo is under civil control in contrast to other GNSS that are under military control. Galileo provides, of course, global coverage, and all these services provided by Galileo are free of charge. Given the characteristics of the Galileo signals, Galileo satellite signals that transmit in dual frequency, and the characteristics of these signals, and make Galileo services and signals with that are provided with a higher availability, continuity, and reliability, and that are able to mitigate some multipath events or multipath errors, so that Galileo can be used in very complex and harsh environments, for example, in urban canyons. Moreover, Galileo also provides an authentication layer. It's going to provide authentication of the navigation messages and also of the Galileo signals that are going to provide robustness, more robustness to the users in case of protecting them against spoofing events. Spoofing events are intentional interference events. In addition to this, and it was commented in the introductions before, Galileo is the first constellation, the only constellation that is going to provide a high accuracy service that allows the user to compute the position with an error up to 20 centimeters in the horizontal plane and up to 40 centimeters in the vertical plane. And this is going to be provided globally and free of charge. And finally, Galileo also provides a search and rescue service in operation since 2020, which provides improves the rescue operations when there are people in distress, for example, in a maritime accident or an aviation accident. But not only they improve they provide them more efficiency in these rescue operations, Galileo also provides a unique return link service. This means that the return link service informs the people in distress that the help is coming, which is very, very useful in this type of situations. Next slide, please. And I would like to go briefly explaining what EGNOS is. EGNOS is the European satellite-based augmentation system. The satellite-based augmentation systems are systems that provide corrections to the users sent through geostationary satellites that improve the GNSS performance, the accuracy that can be achieved with GNSS is the standalone, in this case, GPS standalone. Moreover, EGNOS and ESBAS not only improve the accuracy, but also provide integrity information. The integrity information is the measure of the trust that can be placed in the position that is being computed with GNSS, which is very, very useful for safety critical applications. There are different ESPAs in the world, some of them already in operation and some of them under development, as included in the slide. And EGNOS currently augments GPS, but in the future, the EGNOS will be augmenting also Galileo and will broadcast dual frequency corrections as well. Let's say that all the ESPAs that are interoperable, and any ESPAS equipment is able to work in the regions where there is an ESPAS service. Next slide, please. And EGNSS enable multiple applications across different market segments. And in the next slides, I would like to will focus on providing more details about particular applications related to helping in mitigating the effects of climate change. Next slide, please. In the transport domain, for example, in the transport segments, GNSS positioning, navigation, and timing information is used for the reduction of the emissions thanks to the route optimization. Since many years ago, for example, in the aviation domain, GNSS is used for the optimization of flight routes, helping in saving fuel, reducing the emissions, and also the noise impact. In the same way, drones, which is a market that is growing, is a market segment that is growing very quickly. Drones are using GNSS in order to enable new and greener air mobility, and other applications are, for example, parcel delivery schemes that are traditionally performed with other transport means. But now drones are going to enable these greener applications. There is also Earth observation and GNSS technologies that are used in maritime for route optimization as well, and more in the in cars, we are relying on GNSS to navigate, and this is going to help us not only to find the shortest path from point A to B, but we will be also relying on GNSS. We will be also able to select the route that allows us to use the less fuel as possible. We will avoid congested areas and on the most contaminated areas, for example, and we could reduce our emissions as much as possible using GNSS technologies and GNSS navigation in our cars. Next slide, please. GNSS also supports biodiversity and the ecosystems by providing data for the tracking of the animals whose habitats are threatened in some ways. GNSS trackers in the animals allow to map the behavior of these animals, the population, the interaction between them or between different species, and many other data that is very, very helpful. For example, they can provide knowledge on how far and where exactly the birds travel to migrate, or how water temperature can influence the fish migration.
Maria, 1 minute
Yes.
to go.
Okay, next slide. Yes, just two slides left. GNSS is also important in fighting in fisheries and aquaculture. GNSS is used in fighting illegal fishing and helping to preserve fish stocks. GNSS is also used for traceability and sustainable fishing, and also to support competitive aquaculture, not only in order to select the best place for these farms, but providing data to the farmers in their daily operations. And the next slide, final slide, please. And we cannot forget agriculture also and forestry. GNSS helps in precision and earth observation, of course, used in combination, helping precision farming, and they are used to guide the machinery, to reduce the use of fuel, to use an efficient use of the water and reduce the emissions, of course, to track the food from the source to the consumer, ensuring safety and the quality of the productions, and also to guarantee an efficient and sustainable forest management in forestry operations, and in guidance also of machinery, and also different applications of fertilizers and irrigations in order to use them in an efficient way, timber movement tracking, and so on. This is the end of the presentation. Next slide. I hope I have provided some ideas of how GNSS, which is a different space technology, complementary to Copernicus, to Earth observation, can help in understanding and mitigating the effects of climate change. Thank you, Andreas.
Thank you, Maria, for highlighting how EGNOS and Galileo contribute to fighting climate change. We are indeed running a bit late, but nevertheless, I think it's important that we do the Q&A session to give our webinar also the opportunity for participants to exchange with the panelists. And I would say we start with the question we just received in the chat from Kerry Hiponia from the Philippines, who is referring to the eruption of volcano Mount Bulusan. And the question is, I believe that Copernicus data could help us realize the progression of the damages from the beginning until the end of the eruption. The direction of the ashfall and the total damage were done by the said eruption. Do you provide a history of data or just real-time data? How would a person or an institution be able to avail of the services for their research? Question, I would say, maybe to Carlo and Maria, but also to the other panelists. I don't know if you, Carlo or Maria or somebody else would like to take this question. If it's just real-time data or a history of data.
I'll start and then hope just to keep the discussion flowing. No, but in reality, you get a near real-time data where the satellites are passing the area. That's one possibility, and you also have a possibility to get the history. So every time where one of the sentinels or other components are passing above the volcano, you can get this data. Of course, they are not standing there all the time, so you cannot see it in real time, but you will get pictures that are perpetuating in the time. If you are not monitoring atmosphere and you are using, for example, on land cover, you will probably see damages caused by ashes, impacts, pumas, and other components of accompanying volcanic eruption. I have no specific idea how this eruption looks like. But using land monitoring services, you will clearly see impacts in a similar way as we show the impacts of the tornado or other natural disaster.
Thanks a lot, Miroslav. And I just noticed that Carlo had to leave, and so he couldn't answer the question. Yes, Luis?
Yeah, maybe just to add and to remind all viewers that Copernicus data are available to everybody throughout the world on an open, full and free basis. So this means that if you actually go into the copernicus.eu webpage, you will be able to access many maps already existing there, and you can also request new maps. So it really depends on the type of data which is already available. It may happen that the system already has data available on a certain on a certain event. It may happen that we don't have it yet, so in this particular case you will just have to request it, and normally you will have the maps in about, depending on the urgency, in about 24 to 72 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Yeah, Maria, you would like to add?
Just I'm not a Copernicus expert, more a GNSS expert, but I have a very recent example in Spain, and in the La Palma volcano that was the eruption. We had an eruption for several weeks. Copernicus was used by the Spanish authorities in order to monitor the evolution of the eruption. So this is a service that is very useful in these cases. It's a real example, and also in other applications or other technologies, for example, drones with the GNSS positioning were also used to monitor in closely, as close as they could, because the temperature was very high to this type of drones or devices. They also used the drones to monitor the evolution of the eruption. Just a very recent example in our case.
Thanks, Maria. Yes, indeed, it was over the news for quite some time. We've seen that the EU space program opens lots of opportunities in various sectors, and even within climate change, there are multiple uses. So question to Tatja and also to Luis, knowing that Yolanda had to leave, unfortunately. Is there anything in the pipeline that you can already talk about in terms of planned cooperation between the EU and ASEAN regarding cooperation for EU space program in fighting climate change?
I suppose this is for me. Not
Tatja or you, Luis?
Oh, Tatja, please.
Tatja, in case you're speaking, you're muted.
Yes.
Otherwise, Luis, go ahead.
All right. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question again?
Yes. The question is: we've seen that there are multiple uses for using the European Union space program, including for fighting climate change. Are there any projects in the pipeline that you can already talk about in terms of cooperation between ASEAN and the EU for using the EU space program to fight climate change?
Actually, we are looking for the collaboration. Last year I remember that we have a hackathon with Galileo, if I'm right. That's what we have done. And this year, as we are working with the Korea for the project we call PubCopy. I'm sorry, I can't remember the full name, but the point is we are using the geostationary satellite and the ground sensor to monitor the air, the aerosol and also the greenhouse gas with UNS gap and also with NIER South Korea. And we expect that if we have an opportunity, we would like to discuss with EU to do this. And a part of that, this year, in September, we and Czech Republic will, how to say, join the workshop in Thailand, and we will invite experts from EU and also from Czech to discuss and how to say have a workshop, and we'll invite guests from ASEAN country to join the workshop. This is what we plan for this year, and we hope that we have more.
Thank you, Tatya. Thanks for things in the pipeline. And Louis would like to add?
Yes, thank you very much, Tatya. As a matter of fact, the webinar that you actually mentioned together with today's webinar and together, this is adding up to our relationship in space, together with the event foreseen in Bangkok for October, which actually is going to be organized through the Global Action on Space, together with the Czech presidency of the European Council. All these events are, I would say, are very important steps towards, towards the possibility of having some sort of formal agreement on namely on Copernicus. It could also be on GNSS, on Galileo and EGNOS. It could be on both, actually. So we are very, very happy to see that all these activities that we are spearheading are enticing the interest by our ASEAN friends, and we very much look forward to deepening cooperation, which is indeed possible. We can actually go into some kind of formalities eventually at an administrative level always. So it would be with the European Commission, the DG DEFIS. So yes, but we are very much welcoming this this sort of cooperation. Thank you, Tatya.
Thank you, Tatya and Louis. We have 2 more questions in the chat. Let's take those and then move on to stick somewhat to our schedule. Question from Dr. San Win from Myanmar, referring to Mount Kakaborazi, which is almost 6,000 meters high. It's the highest mountain in the ASEAN region, as I just learned. It is a driver of climate change. And the question is, how can we access the status of the snow cover and climate in and around the mountain by using EU space data? Since Carlo is still gone, I would say that is probably for Miroslav again, unless another panelist would like to take the question.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit puzzled how a mountain can be driver of climate change, but I try to reshape the question in a way that you are interested to see how the climate change is influencing the land cover or snow cover of the mountain. And I will not tell you directly where you can go, but go to the Copernicus website and you will find a particular data sets that covering this particular area, which would be land use for sure, And maybe in the climate change domain, you can also look on because we are also using, for example, Copernicus for measuring heat islands. So you can use temperature measuring to see how the temperatures are changing on this particular in this particular area. But to give you precise guidebook how to do it, I don't think I have knowledge, and there is also not space for it, but this is in a general direction.
Thanks very much, Miroslav. Yes, Louis?
Yeah, if I may, it's quite straightforward. As Miroslav was saying, you go into the Copernicus EU website, you go into the land service. If you don't find the particular map you're looking for, it is always possible to ask for that. And the very good thing about Copernicus is that you can have actually a historical approach towards images. So you can actually say, look, I want the images on this particular area since, I don't know, since 6 months ago until today. And these images and this data will be able to give you a fairly straightforward answer to your question on how climate change is affecting the snowfall on this particular mountain. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis.
If I may elaborate a
yes.
bit, this question poses one interesting, let's say, side note, and this is user community, because this is exactly the question that we are, for example, in our national Copernicus Secretariat solving. Somebody has some problem, and there is a pool of users that can help him with the problem, how to solve it, help him to find the data, or even particular algorithms, how to work with the data. And should there be some Asia cooperation between EU or Copernicus program? I would strongly encourage that one part of this cooperation would be this setup of local community of users of the data, because then there is a huge value added for people who are participating in it.
Thank you, Miroslav. And my mistake, I had slightly misread the question. The mountain is, of course, not a driver of climate change, but a driver of the climate system in the region. Sorry for that. And then last question we take under this Q&A, I would say also to the EU panelists, is there cooperation between Copernicus and UN agencies responding to disasters and climate impacts worldwide?
I suppose this is for me. Yes, we actually have ongoing cooperation with many international actors in this regard, with UNOSA from the United Nations, with CEO and CEOs. So yes, indeed, the European Commission is very much institutionally interlinked with the Earth observation ecosystem internationally. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Then let's close this Q&A session. If we haven't had time to answer your question, we will try to do it as part of the roundtable session we have later. Please also feel free to keep sending your questions in the chat, and we will try to answer them during the roundtable. We have accumulated a little bit of delay, but I hope everybody who's interested can stay longer, and apologies in advance to the next presenters, but we will give you the agreed time anyway. We will now turn to a series of presentations from ASEAN stakeholders on how EU space data is used in the region, and we will start with Dr. Ariel Blanco, who is the director of the Space Information Infrastructure Bureau of the Philippine Space Agency. Dr. Ariel Blanco will share with us his work on climate change, monitoring and mitigation with Earth observation data. Ariel, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. I will just make this in full screen. So the topic that was assigned to me is more on looking at environmental issues of Southeast Asia, utilizing Earth observation. So hence the title is Earth Observation, Addressing Environmental Needs of Southeast Asia. So thank you very much for the invitation. So I'm from the Philippine Space Agency, Space Information Infrastructure Bureau. And in this presentation, we have looked at, I have looked at the fifth ASEAN State of the Environment report. And in this report, it focuses on 6 critical environmental issues: air pollution, land and forest, biota and ecosystems, fresh water, coasts and oceans, and more sustainable production consumption systems to drive ASEAN to a more resource efficient future. Those highlighted here, air pollution, land and forest, and coasts and oceans, are the things that will be tackled in this presentation. So in terms of air pollution, we see that most of the ASEAN countries, with the exception of Brunei Darussalam, exceeds the World Health Organization PM 2.5 air quality guidelines. So this is alarming due to the increase in the traffic, pollution sources, and other developments in the urban areas. But this is not only the problem, as in certain areas, particularly in Indonesia and surrounding areas, we have what called transboundary smoke haze pollution, and this needs to be monitored, and early warning must be issued to different areas. So residents of the different areas, including in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Sumatra, and so on. In the Philippines, the Philippine Space Agency is undertaking what we call the OPERA, Project OPERA. It's operationalization of environmental and resource mapping applications. So here we see the total NO2 column density in the National Capital Region from 2019 to 2022. And also in relation to volcanic eruption, we also monitor the SO2 from, in this case, Taal volcano in the Philippines. In terms of land and forest, we can see here a map taken from that report from the State of the Environment in ASEAN, that many of the deforestation or loss of forest in the ASEAN region are caused by oil palm or tree plantation, logging in combination with shift agriculture, and also agricultural areas, including rubber tree plantations and so on. So these are important because we need to know what drives the deforestation in order to solve these problems. In the Philippines, we have utilized Sentinel data in order to accurately map land cover. In this example, the Manila Bay watershed. Utilizing all the Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 data, we have developed a machine learning approach in order to monitor or map in a more accurate manner the land cover in this particular region for different epochs as shown in this case. We have extended the application of machine-based models utilizing LiDAR data and regressing this with the Sentinel-2 data in order to produce fairly accurate tree cover in terms of percentages utilizing Sentinel-2 data. Here we see the 2013 to 2015 land tree cover percentage data for the same area, the Manila Bay watershed. And we have done this for succeeding epochs, or 2016 to 2018 and 2019 to 2021. We're also applying Sentinel-3 to derive various environmental parameters, including water quality. Here we are seeing for the year 2020, the TSM, or total suspended matter, and chlorophyll A concentration in Manila Bay. And this was created or developed using the C2RCC model. So we have applied the model for all years with the Sentinel-3 data and also with MODIS data. And we are looking at the changes over the different years, approximately maybe 10 or 15 years, in order to see what drives or what happened in the Manila Bay in terms of whether it's improving or not, and what drives its decline. More than that, we are also looking at different water quality parameters, including oil spill, oil slick, marine coliform, salinity, temperature, and also going further into microalgal classes with the use of Sentinel-3. We are also looking at marine debris, including plastics, and we are also mapping ships and structures. In the Philippines, we also applied Sentinel-2 data for doing or analyzing the mangrove extent in the Philippines in a decadal manner from 2000 to 2020. So that's 2000, 2010, and then 2020. And we can see here decline between 2000 and 2010 in terms of the mangrove extent, and an increase between 2010 and 2020. But these are related to environmental and anthropogenic variables, including land cover change, sea surface temperature, sea surface height, rainfall, typhoon count, and climate exposure. So we compare, if we analyze those extent maps, then we can see where mangroves are fairly intact or constant in terms of the extent. And then we have also new mangroves, and then we have also the lost mangroves. But in the cover days are observed basically in areas where you have mangroves indicating expansion, but cover losses were more pronounced in certain regions only, especially in areas where there are frequent typhoon occurrences. And again, based on the correlation with the main climate-related variables and also exposure ranking with climate variables, we note that the changes in the mean annual rainfall increment per climate type and per region have a strong correlation, as well as those in the related to sea level rise, extreme heating events, and extreme precipitation. So we are analyzing this data to look at more in detail these data sets. In terms of the Bandit Habitats, we are looking at, in particular, seagrasses and how these are affected by changes in water quality and other anthropogenic caused events, like, for example, maybe thermal pollution. Here we look at Oyon Bay, which have estimated 1,710 hectares, and which was reduced to only around 1,128 hectares in 2019. The colors that you see here are the gained and the lost and the retained seagrass areas and patches. Of course, in the benthic areas, we have to also look at coral reefs and other benthic habitats. In the Philippines, we are partnering with the USAID, with the University of Rhode, and then looking at the Vpsir nightlight for boat detection, in particular to address issues related to the IUU, or the illegal, unregulated, reported fishing, especially in areas which are less monitored within the Philippines, including the municipal waters and in many parts of the Philippines. And these are basically, we are developing or continuing to develop algorithms in order to localize and make it more accurate in order to, we can monitor these IUUs in tandem with other data such as the AIS. And PhilSA is also successful in identifying fishing grounds in the Philippines using Earth observation data and machine learning. So we have utilized a number of variables here, including the total chlorophyll A in the oceans, sea surface height, also including bathymetry, and many other factors which can also be used in order to identify possible fishing areas. So this is already done for the entire Philippines, but it will be continually be improved, and it will be applied so that it can be fully utilized in so far as guiding our fisher folks and also for protecting our fishing grounds. And we have seen the different applications of in the coastal marine environment, but we are also looking at sea level rise. We are looking at marine litter, including plastics and different hazards, risks, and disasters. And the information derived here are useful for understanding different processes and factors, especially if you are not so sure, and then there are local activities or factors and processes that affect this. And then we can also identify intervention measures and assist in the policy formulation. And as we have seen in the various night, it can also be used for law enforcement. Before I end, so let me show this framework called the Vpsir Framework, or the driver's pressure, stays, impacts, and then the responses. Because in any parts of this framework, Earth observation is very critical. So far, we have seen the different states and trends in terms of maybe the seawater characterization or the biodiversity or the marine litter, but we can also see how the responses, how the actions of the government and people are actually translating into improvements in our environment or not. We can also look at the pressures, including discharges of nutrients and contaminants, and even air pollution. So these are considered pressures in this case, but they can also be considered the states of our air environment. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much. And if you would like to learn more about the Philippine Space Agency, you can visit our website and other social media. And in our website, you can view or download the 3-volume book, online book on entitled Our Place in Space, which details the different applications of space science technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ariel, for sharing with us the efforts made by the Philippines to fight climate change using space data. We will now continue to explore ASEAN Earth observation-based initiatives to fight climate change and move on to the presentation by Dr. Krevan Champajan, who is the director of ARTSA, which is the ASEAN Research Center for Space Technology and Applications. Krevan, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Thank you. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be here and I'm really happy to see that a lot of participants interested in this workshop. In my talk, I would like to share you what we do in terms of human capacity building in use of satellite images for climate change fighting. In ASEAN, EO data have been used for a long period of time, and the EO data have been utilized in many applications. However, in the past, we did not have much networking to share resources and support each other in the use of EO data and applications. So we established ARTSA or ASEAN Research and Training Center for Space Applications in 2015, and right now hosted by GISTA Thailand. The aim of ARTSA establishment are to strengthen knowledge of EO data usage as well as space application through supporting human capacity building and research activity in ASEAN countries. Next slide, please. There are a lot of capacity building activities ASA has organized, such as collaborative international training courses, workshops, seminars, and also summer school. All of which we work closely with our international academic networks, high-profile institutions, and also public sectors. Since 2015, ASA has conducted like 50 different training courses and workshops. Total number of trainees around 1,700 people. So most of the topics and theme of the training and workshops were related to environmental and natural resources management, agricultural management, and of course, impact of climate change to those topics that I previously mentioned. These are examples of training course and workshop that related to climate change that we have done so far. The first one, we conduct regional workshop on building drought resilience in agriculture with our partner like UNUSA in 2017. And the next one, we also conduct the workshop that focus on women researcher. Next slide, please. In ASEAN, and also with APEC economies to build a community for drought management in the region. For this workshop, we got funding from APEC to organize the workshop. And the last one, the latest one that we have just organized, we also got the funding from APEC to conduct the workshop from the project that we call Smart Agriculture for Fighting Climate Change. This project actually initiates because we concerned about the climate change in our region, and we would like to use space technology to tackle the extreme climate issue in our region, like drought and also flood that really adversely affect with our food security. So from our concern, we propose the proposal like the development of climate smart agriculture platform project to APEC. And then we got the fund to develop the platform And then we organize the workshop to show the members how to use the platform. The smart platform allow users to analyze and to share climate data, which can be used as information for agriculture management. The platform is able to present the climate data and also other related geospatial data and show the information as a dashboard and maps that allow users to analyze and share climate data to each other. And the result can be used for agricultural management and for water management in our region. And of course, this project can enhance capacity of the use of space technology for agricultural practice under climate conditions in our region. And also can strengthen network to do the joint research project to each other, or even for monitoring drought or agriculture management together in the future. Next slide, please. Apart from that, we also built youth awareness on the using EO data for fighting climate change. Like in 2018, we organized summer school with ISPRS and allow students to create a small project using EO data. The examples of the projects were synergetic approach on mapping using remote sensing and GIS for disaster management, and geo big data for disaster management, which is related to climate change. So next slide, please. We also connect with the international experts and also professional communities to the expert and student exchange program, as well as international internship. Next slide, please. Apart from that, we also do a joint research project with our renowned partners like ASEAN Thai universities, JAXA, UNSCAP, UNOSAT, NASA, and institutions like ITC, in particular apply geoinformatics in environmental and natural resources management, climate change on agriculture, food security, and urban development. For the upcoming event that we plan for ARTSA activity, we plan to sign MOU with our partnership like CESTI from India to do human capacity building and research in space technology. We would like to do this kind of activity together. And also we plan to do the promotion of loss-to data utilization in ASEAN countries. And also we plan to develop a lot of proposals for doing human capacity building and research activity. Of course, some of them are related to climate change issue in ASEAN. As international gateway connection, ARTSA hosted by GISA really hope that we can expand capacity building and research network for in this region, particularly in climate change related in the near future. And I believe that the future activities are able to help ASEAN members to understand more about how to use EO data and to tackle the respond to climate change. Yeah. This is all that we have done from our center. Thank you.
Sorry, just had to unmute myself as you were faster than expected, Kravan.
Oh,
but thank you very much for this important overview and also for giving us a few minutes to catch up. Excellent. I will now hand over the floor to Dr. Lam Dao Nguyen, who's the director of the Ho Chi Minh City Space Technology Application Center, to hear more about local initiatives in Vietnam. Lam Dao, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see my slide?
Yes. Excellent.
Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to share our activity on EO application to fight the climate change. I'm Minh from Vietnam National Space Center, Ho Chi Minh City office. So my talk consists of two parts. The first one, very shortly overview of the VNSC, and the second one is EO-based application to fight climate change. So VNSC just established more than 10 years in 2011. At that time, we called Vietnam National Supply Center. From 2017, we officially changed to the new name Vietnam National Space Center. So VNSC consists of the three groups. The first one is space technology, space application, and space science and education. We also manage the 10-year project on Vietnam Space Center project will be finished next year to build the infrastructure and launch the new radar remote sensing satellite, the first one in Vietnam next year. So you see in the application group, we have two departments in Hanoi and one center in Ho Chi Minh City. So this is the satellite development roadmap from VSC. We start from So we start from 2011, and we developed Beetle Dragon 2013, Nano Dragon 2021, and Micro Dragon launching 2018. And we hope that at the end of next year, we will have the first radar remote sensing Lotus-Sat 1 will be launched. So in Vietnam, we have two trajectories for development and application of space science and technology up to 2030. This trajectory approved by our Prime Minister last year. And the second one is a trajectory of national remote sensing development up to 2030, vision to 2040. It's approved last 3 years in 2019. So I move to the second part on Earth observation-based application to fight climate change. In Vietnam, we have done many projects using the Earth observation data related to climate change. For example, in the area of food security, flooding, drought and salinity, erosion, land subsidence, sea level rise, etc. I will show you some results of our project. We work in VNSC. So you can see here the products show you the number of days after rice planting. It means after rice sowing or transplanting. So every month we send the product to the Department of the Crop Production, Ministry of Agriculture for the deploying rice production. So the colors show you the number of days after rice planting. In this is the Mekong Delta. From the Delta, we have 2 crops or 3 crops per year. It depends on the area to area. And the second application, we use Sentinel-1 also to monitoring the spatial temporal change of flood area in the lower Mekong basin. We use Sentinel-1A and 1.2. So you can see the flood attempts every 6 days during the flood season in 2018. When we overlay the rise rough stack to the flood area, so we can advise to the local government and also the farmer where the floods coming and where we will harvest the rice. We also overlay the salinity isolate, it means the 4 gram per liter to the rice map. So you can see during the El Nino effect to the coastal provinces in the Mekong Delta, 2016, this is in the dry season. So some rice affected by the salinity comparing to the previous year, 2015, and also in 2020, because the reducing of the water discharge from the river, so the salinity is through into the land more than the previous year. So we when we send the rice growth status to the local governments, so they can change their crop calendar maybe earlier during the dry season, so they can have it before the salinity affect to the rice. And we also using the satellite data to monitor the erosion of the riverbank or coastline. Before we use Landsat or other data, and after we have the Sentinel-1 and 2, we can use this data to update the riverbank and shoreline to monitor the erosion. From 2018, VNC developed the Vietnam Data Cube to store the free-access satellite data like the Landsat provided by USGS, Sentinel-1 and 2 provided by EU, and ALOS-2 from JAXA. So we also developed some application like for forest, rice, and water quality. For the international cooperation, we have been doing some projects and also initiative. For example, in 2019, VNC is chair of CEOS, so we propose 2 initiatives. The first one for forest and the second one for rice monitoring in the Mekong Basin countries. And VISCO project belonging to SCO program is managed by Gnss. And drought adapt, we work with DOR to monitor the drought affected by El Nino in the central of Vietnam. Rice, we work very closely with the Gnss ZPO. This is also ISA project using the Sentinel-1 for the Mekong Basin countries. And we also conducted the Geo Amazon project monitor the rise bati and flood in the Lower Mekong Basin. This project will be finished soon.
Lam Dao, about 1 minute left.
Okay, so you can see we have three products. We did the cross comparison among the rice map between the VSC. We use Sentinel-1, JAXA use ALOS-2, and CEPIO also use Sentinel-1. This is the result from the short chair initiative. So to promote application and solution, we need first one is a high resolution satellite data and frequency of the observation. I think for some application we need very high resolution. For example, when we monitor the erosion of the river bank or coastline. But most of the application we can use the high resolution of Sentinel-1 or 2. The second one is capacity building. We want to expand our application to the ministries. So we need the training to the official how to use the remote sensing. The third one is improving the Earth observation capacity, and the last one, but not least, is promoting the international cooperation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Lam Dao, for this overview of local initiatives. Very informative. We will now turn to our final session of this webinar, which, as mentioned before, is a roundtable, bringing together all of our panelists today to discuss how the EU and ASEAN countries could collaborate more together in fighting climate change on the basis of space-based data. Also, we will use this at the same time as a second Q&A session. So to our participants, please feel free to continue asking your questions via the chat box so that we can discuss them as part of this roundtable. Maybe starting with the last two presentations we saw by Dr. Krevan Champanjan and Dr. Lam Dao Nguyen. What would you say in the ASEAN region or in Thailand or in Vietnam? What are the most critical environmental variables to fight climate change that could be addressed through space-based data? Krevan or Lam Dao, if you have any opinion on that? What would be sort of the priorities in your countries or for ASEAN as a whole in terms of fighting climate change through space-based data?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, from our country, we focusing on the like the drought and salinity, improvement in the agriculture area, and some area we have the problem with the temperature heat island in the urban area, and we also want to monitor the land subsidence in the urban and also in the Mekong Delta. And the other one is the water resources is now you see in the Mekong Delta. We some months in the year we have not much the water because I said that in my presentation. Some years we have not much water discharge from the river, from the upland, from the upper basin.
All right, so quite a variety of issues indeed in terms of fighting climate change. Thank you, Lam Dao. Krevan, anything to add from your side?
For me, I think flood and drought are kind of a critical issue in Thailand and also in ASEAN countries. So I think if we have more data that can improve our analysis, like EO application that can improve the result that can be used to tackle this kind of issue, I think it will be good for us. And also, not only for the data, we also need the capacity building because, of course, even though we have been used the data like EO data before, but for the new generation data, maybe we don't have much experience. So if we have kind of expertise from EU, it would be good for us. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's also a good opportunity to remind all panelists, but also, of course, all participants that the EU is very much looking forward to greater cooperation with the ASEAN countries and ASEAN as such also, of course, for space cooperation on space, be it in the fight against climate change or beyond. So you're, as individuals, as institutions, companies, all encouraged to reach out directly to Louis or to the global action. We will paste the link again. Either be it to work on institutional cooperation or to direct you to the right interlocutor, be it, for example, for capacity building, to move you to the right people or to the right sources, or both, of course. And also for private companies, but also research institutions, public agencies, to look into our business coaching. We will also paste the link again to see if that is relevant for them, so that through business coaching, they can make greater use of the EU space program, of the data, derive commercial solutions. So that we're very much encouraging you to do.
Yes.
We have the formal confirmation by the Commission here with the yes. Luis, we can't see and hear you anymore. I believe you wanted to say more than the yes, or I think we lost Luis. Okay, then maybe, Luis, are you back?
Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had an urgent phone call.
Okay.
Sorry.
Would you like to add anything, Luis?
Well, I think you said it. I mean, the European Commission is very much looking forward to increasing cooperation in this particular area. I think we were very detailed in giving you the number, the action services, the type of products that we can put at your disposal. And of course, we are very much looking forward to increased use of the global action services by Asian stakeholders. So please proactively look for institutional and private use and support of this very good instrument to increase cooperation with the European Union in space. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. And then maybe to discuss a few more technical aspects, maybe discussion, especially maybe under for Dr. Ariel Blanco. Can you speak maybe about what are performance requirements for Earth observation systems, and also maybe have you compared Copernicus-based products with other Earth observation products that are offered elsewhere, and if you can draw any conclusions in terms of relevance, applicability for ASEAN?
For the case of the Philippines, so we have been doing a lot of applications on DRR, disaster risk reduction and management, and agriculture and climate change. And these are, I think, fairly applicable to any of the ASEAN country. And comparing, for example, the availability of Sentinel products, Sentinel images, and other data sets, we can see that the Sentinel products have enrich how we are actually getting more information about, say, sea level rise. So in the Philippines, we have recently concluded a project on the coastal sea level rise. So the Sentinel-3 data played a very important role in getting accurate sea level rise rates. And then we expect that this will be also be further improved with Sentinel-6. And for the other damage assessment, so the Philippines is frequently visited by typhoons and lots of other calamities. So we are utilizing Sentinel-1, especially for damage assessment after typhoons. So these are quite important because previously we have very limited access to SAR data. And with SAR, we can do a lot of things, including the vertical land motion, including damage assessment of buildings and infrastructure, and even extending it to monitoring and mapping damages of mangroves and other vegetation areas, especially during times where you have cloudy periods. So we are very thankful that these images, these data sets are made available, and we are looking forward to the Copernicus Philippines program, to which PhilSA will play an active part, and we will be, I believe, hosting the mirror site for the Philippines and for the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Squeezing in a question we received from the audience, from Aurel. What ground-based observations are being used to validate and compare with space-based observations?
Yeah. It depends on the, of course, the parameter. So if you look at vertical land motion, if you look at the activities that the Philippine Volcanology Institute is doing, they have also sensors scattered around, including GNSS, to monitor the deformations. And these are compared with the deformations that we can see through the interferometric analysis of SAR data. For the case of water quality, we are also doing sensor measurements or in situ measurements. In some cases, we are deploying in situ automatically logging instrument in order to monitor water quality parameters such as chlorophyll A, even the total suspended, turbidity, and to some extent, even the dissolved oxygen and even nutrients. And earlier, PAPGAPI was mentioned, so Philippines will be participating in that project. It's already being implemented, or it will start soon, and it will focus on air quality, and there will be a range of sensors which will be utilized in tandem with the sensors equipment that are being utilized by the Environmental Management Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. So we are also looking at utilizing crowdsourced information or data, so developing mobile applications so that people can participate in monitoring water quality, in monitoring various environmental issues, even air quality. And in tandem with Earth observation, this will be really a good monitoring system so that we can act upon in a timely manner and prevent, say, major degradation of our environment.
Thank you, Ariel. I see Luis.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Likewise, in the case of Copernicus, we also it is important to underline that the data and the images provided by the Sentinels, which are the Copernicus satellites, are being complemented. But what we call contributing missions. So these are satellites put at the disposal of the Copernicus program by different member states of the European Union and other European actors. Having said that, the Copernicus and the contributing data are being complemented as well by what we call in situ data, which very much goes in line with what Ariel Blanco just spoke about. So this is actually complemented by data which is obtained by other means which are not absolutely satellite based. So you obtain them in through a very different wide number of instruments and applications on the ground and in air. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. And see, we have another question from the audience. Have there been efforts to bring environmental science and research findings to schools and colleges as part of public communication on these critical issues? I think that would also be for Ariel again.
Okay. In the Philippine Space Agency, we are very, one of our KDAs or key development areas is the space education and awareness. And the Philippine Space Agency is implementing various programs on capacity building and in IAC. And the plan is also to involve or to produce modules and incorporate it in curriculum of the elementary and even high school so that space science and technology can be better appreciated and what it can do for our community, for our country. And on top of that, we are basically involving citizens in our effort to monitor our environment and to make sure that critical issues are being reported before they come out of proportion. So in terms of public communication, so every month we have what we call the CCAP webinar. So this is primarily to since PhilSA is a new agency, we have to make sure that we have to promote our agency in what we do and to expand our collaboration with various sectors. So the Philippine Space Agency is working with the Department of Education in reaching out to schools and even utilizing amateur radio units to entice students and to make them more interested in space science and technology.
Thank you, Ariel. Yes, Luis?
Yes, just to add that I think that it would be particularly interesting in this case that Asian community, as we said before, joins the Copernicus Academy network because this is precisely what they do. This is they translate all the knowledge and the experience and the know-how to the different academic communities, not only in Europe but worldwide. And this is also very important for you over there in Asia because it would enable a very direct link with practitioners here in the European Union on Copernicus. So becoming part of the network would not only enable this information to spread out throughout the academic community in your countries, but also would enable greater cooperation with top-notch practitioners in Europe. Normally, applications are being dealt with on an individual basis, so it's either research institutions or universities as such that can apply for membership. But I think that it would be also interesting to have a joint application by institutions from Asia. So to speak, a consortium of universities, for instance, that could actually cover the whole Asian community. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. I would say in the interest of time, we move to our last distinguished speaker who has been waiting patiently in the room. I will give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Marek Lipczycki, Ambassador of the Czech Republic to Thailand, who will share with us the upcoming activities that will be organized in Asia with a focus on space and also give his closing remarks on the webinar. Ambassador Lipczycki, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Good afternoon, good morning to everybody. First of all, let me thank you very much for letting me and the Czech Republic to be part of this event. We really much appreciate it since we want to be engaged in this kind of cooperation and we want to contribute. I would like to thank also all the speakers for their interventions and contributions and for some, let's say, food for thought or homework for all of us for the weeks to come. As you know, the EU Global Action on Space has been promoting this kind of cooperation worldwide, globally, and ASEAN is one of the, let's say, focal points of it. And I hope that today's event has contributed to better, if not understanding, then at least better awareness of what can be done together in this area, what can be done using the EU solutions, EU data in ASEAN or Asia as such. And it very much goes along with our priorities. Our priorities means use checks, and I believe also with those of our partners in ASEAN, at least based on my conversations with our friends from GISDA or Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation of Thailand. Today we focused on a couple of the elements of which the EU Space Program consists. There's many more elements, and we'd like to elaborate on that in the future. As it was mentioned by Kuntatya and followed up by Luis. In this regard, we are working on a workshop or seminar rather than webinar, a seminar, a hybrid seminar to take place in Bangkok in perhaps now it seems more probably in October than September. In cooperation with our colleagues from GISDA for whose readiness to work with us, I'd like to thank them and appreciate it again. We'd like to organize a seminar which will be focused on, again, on two items which were mentioned today, meaning applications related to Copernicus and to Galileo. Perhaps with more broader focus on disaster risk reduction, building resilience, supporting sustainable way of development, preventing of disasters, and many kinds of security, human security, food security, and so on. The second topic of that event would be a bit different, would be focused on more, let's say, space diplomacy and the topic of the SOS. You know better than I do, safety, security, and sustainability in the outer space. And perhaps then we would also, because we don't want this to be kind of to be part of a process that would lead us to, among others, to perhaps engagement in the end of November in an event organized in Prague. All these events are organized within the framework of the EU Global Action in Space, with contribution coming also from other agents, various EU agencies and institutions, and the forthcoming Czech presidency of the Council of the European Union. We, as the future presidency, we have a couple of priorities. We have given ourselves certain priorities. We don't want to chase too many rabbits at the same time, but I believe that those horizontal ones as well as geographical ones go very much in line with what is needed in Asia or in the Pacific. The horizontal ones, of course, sustainability, resilience, and so on. I would repeat myself. Geographical wise, we'd like to focus on the implementation of the EU Indo-Pacific for cooperation. For the EU strategy for cooperation with the Indo-Pacific. And here our ambition is to move into the implementation phase. And in this regard, we're going to organize or co-organize or support a couple of events in the region as well as in Prague, and the seminar in Bangkok is one of them. As I mentioned, it's to be hybrid, it's to be focused on Indo-Pacific, but with main focus on ASEAN plus a couple of other Indo-Pacific partners. And we would very much appreciate any inputs coming from the Indo-Pacific or ASEAN side, We have heard today a couple of them, and I appreciate very much all the contributions from colleagues from Thailand as well as from the Philippines and Vietnam. I took note on salinity, drought, floods. These are exactly one of the topics that we ourselves have been thinking about, and we would like to follow on them. So please give us a chance to contribute, and I look very much forward to as huge as possible participation from all of us, not only all of you, all of us in the event in Bangkok first. I hope for participation in person if circumstances permit, and hope to see people being able to see each other face to face. So thank you very much again for today's event and for your cooperation, and look forward to our joint endeavors in the future. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Ambassador Lipjitsky, for your remarks. And indeed, we hope that panelists, participants take this webinar as an opportunity to get in touch with Luis or with the Global Action to see where we can increase cooperation on space. And especially once again to all entities that are eligible, please visit our pages on the business coaching open call, apply. The services are free of charge, and if you're selected, you can benefit from tailor-made coaching for your institution, for your company, that can really open up interesting commercial opportunities on the basis of the EU space program. I'd like to thank all speakers and participants. We hope that this webinar was interesting to you. And we also encourage you to complete the post-webinar survey, which you will receive by email. So we can ensure that future webinars and also in the future events, and we also hope that there will be more physical events or at least hybrid, really respond to the needs you may have in the ASEAN region. And on that note, I would like to wish everything a pleasant evening or rest of the day, and hope to see you again in one of our webinars as part of our business coaching, or let's say in terms of institutional contacts with DG DEFIS. Thank you very much.